All right, the man, the myth, the legend, Lycan GTV. Thanks a lot for coming on, buddy.
Glad to be here, dude.
How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Yourself?
I'm doing very well. I'm very happy to be sitting here talking to you.
Glad to be here with you.
As is tradition, there's going to be a couple of dry questions to start out. But first things first, you've been more out of the public eye in esports for the past little tiny while, a little bit more than you're used to after putting the shows on hiatus and everything like that. What's that been? What's it like taking a break? How you felt?
It's been a lot of different feelings. The break really kind of started in January. I was still doing the show, but Lycan League kind of, I stopped the Lycan League at the end of January and just slowly kind of pulled back. There were some, things that happened with regards to the esports scene and myself, and that just kind of demoralized me for a little bit. So I stepped back for a little bit, didn't watch as much StarCraft, didn't really watch as much anything. Played a little bit of Counter-Strike, then kind of moved to some non-esports games for a little bit. So the earlier part of the break, before the show really kind of went away on a hiatus, the earlier part was a little stressful. But once I kind of deflated, I started just to regain that passion. I know that's really cliche, but I started watching StarCraft again, started wanting to play the ladder again. I still get a little bit of anxiety, but now I can play at least like 10, 15 games without wanting to kill myself. So taking time away it's been good, but I didn't want to stay away for too long. And I think that I'm definitely over that.
Well, that's really good to hear. I'm really happy to hear that. Jumping off that a little bit, what forced you to go into hiatus mode in the first place? If that's an okay question to ask, if there's anything you can tell us.
Yeah, no. So on the back end of the esports thing, I've been trying to find different ways to progress the career. Even in my day job, like I'm always looking to better myself as a person, better myself as an employee, and better myself to achieve different goals that I have. And obviously, one of the goals I have in esports is to be something a little more than just a podcast host. And as I've been working towards that, I've been talking to some people on the back end, and I got some pretty promising things said to me last year. I did the Gfinity event. There were, not a lot of people saw it because DreamHack happened the same weekend, but the people that did see it were like, hey, you did, pretty good job. And there were some people talking about different events that could happen in 2016. Well, come 2016, everything shrinks down quite a bit, right? We don't have all the in-studio events there were in 2015 and before. We don't have as many live events. A lot of those have been cut down. So there isn't a lot of work. And hosting is a position that there are plenty of hosts and not enough analyst desks or stages or anything like that. So the same people that were like, hey, 2016, maybe something will happen, or hey, if you get some on-camera experience, maybe we'll reconsider. That kind of fell through. And I had people say, we're not going to be able to do anything with you this year. So it was a little off-putting. I don't expect anything. I want to make that clear. Like, I don't expect anything from any sort of content creator or producers or anything like that. It's just that the way I saw things going, it didn't pan out. And that's just kind of, the natural response to that. And for some people is going to be to kind of be put down. So that's really what it was. It was thinking things were going in a certain direction, having some semblance of a reason to believe they were going in that direction, and then to not have it come to fruition. So the time I've been taking is kind of just to reset, to tell myself, hey, it just means come back and work harder. And that's what I've been getting ready to do.
Going into the traditionally a little bit more dry, but still really important questions. The age-old question. How did you find yourself playing StarCraft?
Jump back to 2013. I'm in Afghanistan as a contractor. And while I'm there, there's a dude that was named Carlos, and we worked in the same office. And one day he comes in. I think it was summertime 2013, or not summertime. It was about April maybe 2013. And he comes in and he says, dude, the greatest game ever is coming back. I can't wait to get home and play it. And he shows me the Heart of the Swarm trailer. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's pretty sick. I've been a huge Blizzard fan for a long time. I've played World of Warcraft since vanilla. So seeing that trailer, I was just like, this is that Blizzard cinematic that I love. That's pretty cool. Completely forgot about it for a few more months until I go back in July of 20. I got back in June, but then July comes. I bought a brand new computer. I have all this power that I've never had in a computer before. And I'm like, got to do something, because I really wasn't into Miss Pandaria. I had been gone for a while, and I wasn't feeling the content. So I downloaded StarCraft, and then I found Reddit, and I happened to find the subreddit for StarCraft pretty close to when I started playing StarCraft. So it was just immediately like 1v1 was all I cared about. I didn't play the campaign. I had a friend named Jake who played a lot with me, and we'd do 2v2s for a little bit and all that stuff. So that's how I ended up playing StarCraft.
Before we get too deep into the esports side of everything, I've heard you talk about this an awful lot, but you were a member of the United States military, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So do you want to, I don't want to turn this into like a really big topic of discussion or anything, but I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting part of your story. Can you talk a little bit about your experience in the military?
Absolutely loved it. It was one of the best times of my life. I always think back, when people think about Brood War with, rose tinted glasses, and they just think, oh, it was the good old days. That's what I think about with my Marine Corps times. I went in 2006, and from there I went to a whole bunch of different schools, traveled all over the country. Eventually, within my first year and couple months, I was over in Iraq. And I was on my first deployment. I did 2 deployments to Iraq, 1 to Afghanistan as a Marine, and then I went back as a civilian. And it was just an incredible experience. I did IT, so it set me up for a lot of success when I got out. I finished college when I got out, actually just finished it this last May. And it was just a lot of fun, made a lot of friends. I found, it was while there that I found I liked doing stand-up comedy. It was there that I learned, I like doing comedic music on the guitar. So yeah. It was just an awesome, awesome time. Really great experiences.
Before you really got into esports, you mentioned stand-up comedy a little bit right there. You did a little bit of work as an amateur stand-up comedian, and I know that initially you wanted that to be like your dream career, right?
Yeah.
What were you planning on that?
So the reason I was actually in Afghanistan, because I had a job back here in 2012, back in the States. But the reason I took the job in Afghanistan is because contractors make a little more than you do stateside. You get some hazardous duty pay. Usually you work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so you have more hours you're working as well. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go do this. And what I intended to do was to save a ton of money and move to New York City, right? New York City is an expensive place to live on one hand. The other hand, I wanted enough money saved that I could live for about a year and not have to work except maybe an odds and ends job, a couple of days a week, right, during the day. That way I can do the open mic night circuit, and then I can hopefully work my way into, a regular comedy regimen. And this all came off the back of working at the Baltimore Comedy Factory. It used to be downtown. I don't know where they moved. I haven't been there since I came back. But I was working at the Baltimore Comedy Factory. There was a contest called Baltimore's Funniest Comedian or Baltimore Funniest Person, something like that. And I competed in that. I won the first round. I think I won the second round, and then it was the third round I got knocked out because I didn't bring enough people. So it was a bringer show where you have to bring people, and the whole goal of them isn't to run this to really find Baltimore's Funniest Person. It's to get people to come and buy drinks on nights when normally they don't get the big comedians. It's usually on a Wednesday, Tuesday, something like that. So I did really well at that, though. And the first night, I absolutely killed it. And the guy who runs the place, the general manager, he comes up to me. He's like, hey, man, I really like what you do. I did a part stand-up show, part funny music show. And I played one song, and the guy was like, hey, I really like that. Is there any chance you'd be interested in coming and playing on a regular basis? So I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. So every Saturday, sometimes Sunday if I was feeling up to it, I don't think I ever did Fridays, but every Saturday at the Comedy Factory, I'd go and I'd sit in the waiting area where people wait to get their drinks, and I'd play some pre-written songs. I'd use some rap songs, but with an acoustic vibe to them because people found that funny. And then I'd also do improv songs. That's something I've actually been really good at, despite, how often I get on camera and seem like I'm not good talking on my feet on the show. I'm actually really good if you put a guitar in my hand. I think if you remember the Chan Man audition, that was all, improv. So I'm not saying I'm genius at it. I'm just saying I'm pretty decent. And so I was doing that. And then next thing I know, I'm being asked to start opening for people. So I've opened for big names. I opened for Amy Schumer. I opened for, I can't remember. He's the guy with Norm Macdonald. So he was there. I have a picture with him. I it was on one of my old phones, but he was there. And in between his sets, um, I had he came out to get a beer, and I usually like sit out there and I just dick with my guitar when the other opening comedians are playing and all that. So he's out there and he's getting a beer from the bar in that area, and I just started singing him a song, like, off the top of my head. And he walked over and he gave me his beer. So technically, Norm Macdonald gave me a beer. So that's a little backstory. I used to work at the Baltimore Comedy Factory. Here's the TLDR. Used to work at the Baltimore Comedy Factory, did some openings for some really cool people, decided this is something I really want to do for a career. So I went to Afghanistan to try and save money, ended up coming back early. Little known fact for some people is that if you go overseas and you spend over 330 days, or at least 330 days overseas, $90,000 approximately is tax free. You don't have to pay taxes on it, and then you pay taxes on whatever else is left. So I was trying to stay for that 330 days, but the contract got cut short. I ended up coming home early, and so I actually had to pay all the money that I wasn't paying for taxes, because you sign a piece of paper and you can do it at the end, but I was like, nah, screw it, I'm going to do it now. So you sign a piece of paper and your company stops withholding federal income tax. And so I had to pay all that back. So I really only had a very small amount of money, and I just had to go right back to work. So that's where that kind of the esports and the comedy thing intersect. I didn't get to make it to where I'm moving to New York, had to go right back to the workforce, found StarCraft, and then we go from there.
Jumping off of that, you couldn't go to New York. You wanted to be a comedian, couldn't do it. How did you get into the esports side of StarCraft specifically? You started out with Gosu Pizza. How did that really transition from an idea of, wow, I really like StarCraft, to, wow, I really want to work in StarCraft?
So my drive at the time, I was living in York, Pennsylvania, and I was driving down to Falls Church, Virginia, which on a good day is like an hour, 45 minutes-ish. On a bad day, it's 2.5 hours. So I have a lot of thinking time in the car. And during the time that I got into StarCraft, so I think while I tell this, I'm going to go ahead and look up the date, because I think it was August 24th, right? So Richard Lewis, I believe it was putting out those Broken Promises articles. Remember? It was like the multi-part articles, and I think they talked about cats and artosis and a bunch of other crap. And he was just talking about, I think it was North America. And so I just fell in love with this scene right away. I was excited to I didn't really have any intention of like jumping into the esports thing, right? But I saw this article put out, and I'm watching Day 9. I'm really liking StarCraft. And I'm like, screw this, North Americans can whatever. So that's why I created Gosu Pizza. I was thinking about getting into streaming. I was thinking about what could I do that would kind of like get people to want to think about it, to want to watch it, right? And I was like, oh, you know what? I'll give away pizzas on stream. That's pretty cool, right? People will watch me. I'll be like, hey, you want a pizza? Yeah, I want a pizza. Oh, okay, give away pizza. And that idea, in combination with the Richard Lewis articles, kind of just formed into, what if I ran a tournament? And that's what I did. And I thought, I'll run a tournament and I'll give away pizza. And then it just went from there. I started thinking about how we're going to do it. What are we going to do? I came up with the league structure and decided everyone's going to get a pizza from each league. We'll do it several times a week. Eventually, I ended up switching it to one time a week, because I realized that's a lot of work. I couldn't do that. Couldn't pull it off. So that was the start. It was Gosu Pizza. It was the idea that I wanted to do something, for the community. I really didn't have any sense of what that meant at the time, though. I wasn't thinking, oh yeah, hey, I'm going to go do something for the community because they deserve it or whatever. It was just more like, hey, North America is in a bad place. Here, let me go make this pizza tournament. And just everything kind of went from there.
So jumping off from that, you didn't just do Gosu Pizza. You were a writer for EsportsMax. Is that correct?
Did you find that, or did I tell you that?
No, I found that. I didn't. EsportsMax is like a domain, has completely shut down. You can't find anything. Mm-hmm. There's nothing. There's a YouTube channel, and on the YouTube channel, you've got 2 interviews, I think it is.
Oh, yeah. I think it was. Do you remember who it was? Was it
Poltz and Ruff?
And Ruff, yeah. The Ruff interview was really good, because that was after some of his really exciting games at Red Bull Atlanta. But yeah. Yeah,
so just talk a little bit about working with EsportsMax, what that was, what work you did, what kind of relationship you had, what it did for you in the esports industry.
Okay, so we got to go back in time, right? So after Gosu Pizza, I'm even more following the StarCraft scene, right? Like, I'm watching all the pro games now. I'm watching every weekend of StarCraft, DreamHack, IEM, etc. Just absolutely eating it up. And then comes Red Bull New York. And I'm like, all right, this is, I'm in Pennsylvania. New York's only a couple hours away. I'm going to go there. So I go to Red Bull New York. And before this, again, never thought esports is where I wanted to take my life. I just thought esports was really awesome, and I like doing the Go Soup Pizza thing. So we'll start with the first day, which is the night before the start of the tournament. They had this meet and greet. Day 9, Axeltoss, or Axelov. I don't think Axeltoss was there. No, it's Axelov, Mr. Bitter, all those people, and then all the players were there doing a meet and greet. They did a little spiel, gave some speeches. I think they did a Q&A, not sure. But then it was just drinking and partying. And I ended up getting drunk and hanging out with Axelov for a little bit, just talking about, I don't even remember what, just 30 minutes, just that, you get it kind of a little too much to drink, and you just are both really excited, back and forth talking. And then I remember seeing day 9 and thinking someone was playing Magic the Gathering or something, and I remember I love Magic the Gathering. I used to play it all the time, wasted a ton of money on it, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to talk him up with Magic the Gathering. I'd probably sounded like a complete idiot, but it was just a really fun time. I made some friends, but before the intoxication happened, I had someone say, hey, you're the guy that does Go Soup Pizza. And I just remember being like, holy shit, yeah, I do Go Soup Pizza. It didn't give me a big head or anything. It was just kind of like, whoa, someone, recognized me. And I'm a bit of an attention whore. I'm sure people have made that joke before about me. I think I might have seen some comments on Reddit. But I found that out when I did this video called Marine Pizza Delivery a long time ago. And it was this video of me chasing down a pizza lady and improvising a song about her. And it's done really well. I mean, it didn't go viral or anything, but over the years, it's got like 800,000 views. And it was then that because I used to do that all the time. I used to sit in the smoke pit at my unit, and it was this giant gazebo right outside the barracks. And anytime a delivery person would come by and I'd have my guitar, I'd run after them. But other times we'd sit in the smoke pit and drink, and I'd play songs, and it'd be like old 90s music, early 2000s. And we'd all sing along, Save Tonight, Glycerine by Bush, whole bunch of things. And so I really liked the attention. But I also like that people were happy, right? When I think about good times in the Marine Corps, it's those times of sitting around with my friends in the smoke pit, drinking, singing songs we liked from our younger days. And so it's like a mixture of both, right? There's the part that I enjoy the attention, but there's also the part where I like making people happy. And when Go Soup Pizza happened and there was like the big reaction on Reddit and people were really into it, that made me happy. But then when someone recognized me and they said that they thought I was doing something really cool for the community, there was like that combination that was just like, oh, this is too much. Because I've been recognized for that. Marines would recognize me for the Marine Pizza Delivery video, and it was that same reaction. So take that, and then take the next couple of days, right? So I make some friends, I meet some really cool people, some people I never thought I would be that caliber of personality that I'd get to just hang with, and then come the next day, and I have nothing to do. I got there by myself, so I'm in New York, and I'm like, I'm gonna go get a Starbucks, and I'm gonna go to the event, and I'm gonna get a really good seat. No one's outside. I think I'm there at like 7:30 in the morning. And I see this guy walking up to the door, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll follow this guy in. They don't have it locked or anything. The guy just opens it up. And I look at him, I'm like, this guy looks familiar. Hey, who are you? And he looks at me for a second, and then he points forward, and I look, and there's the big wall of people. And right in front of us is this blonde-haired dude named Snoot smiling back at me. Actually, I don't know if he was smiling. He was looking at me. But I was like, oh, okay. Excuse me. I'm an idiot. Hi, Snoot. Nice to meet you. So that was kind of a little embarrassing, but it was a cool moment nonetheless. So I'm there early. I took some pictures, got some karma whoring from Reddit saying, oh, this place is so cool. And I thought, you know what? I wonder if I can get a press pass. So I did. And this really awesome woman named Donna, who's one of the best PR people I've ever worked with. She was there, and I just said, hey, I do this little thing called Go Soup Pizza. Any chance you have an extra press pass? And I swear we're getting somewhere with this. So I'm like, you have this press pass? She gives me a press pass. I'm all excited. Oh, I get a goodie bag. Oh, it's so cool. I get to hang up in the room where the snacks are and the free Red Bull. Oh man, do not try to cure a hangover with free Red Bull. So anyway, I'm there, and I go up to the booth where people are taking photographs and all kinds of stuff, and I meet the dudes from 10 Ton Hammer, aka EsportsMax, the organization, Master Games International, that owns 10 Ton Hammer. They also owned EsportsMax. So I meet them. We have a really good time all weekend. I talk with them. Really awesome guys. And I get a business card from them. I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, we'll talk. And that was it, right? That was the interaction. But the rest of the weekend was amazing. The rest of the weekend, I had some really cool times, met more cool people. Like I was Total Biscuit and Axiom and Acer were playing in the, God, what was it? I think it was the Pro League they were playing in. And he's pacing around. This is the second day, so Saturday. He's pacing around. He's really nervous. And I'm like, hey, man, what's going on? You okay? And he's like, oh, my team. You know, he just kind of had a very candid moment where he's like, oh, my team's playing. I'm really nervous. I can't sit down. My stomach's all screwed up. He just was very open. And I just remember that being like a really, cool moment where the guy was just really, it wasn't like, oh, hey, nice to meet you, and then walked away. So there were all kinds of experiences like that. So then jump to 2014, Heroes of the Storm is coming out, and I make a little demo video where I'm like giving some example of how to use the unit tester or how to play a certain unit, I think it was. And I said, hey, I'd like to make Heroes of the Storm content, because at this time I kind of realized there was an opportunity for me to maybe jump ahead. StarCraft's it was very full of people, lots of pros, not lots of pros, but at the time, 2014, some pros were making the transition into caster, whatever. So I thought to myself, maybe StarCraft isn't going to be big enough for me, or StarCraft's been around so long, I don't have the knowledge base to actually be a member of this community and do something really big. So maybe I'll try Heroes. And so I sent them the video, and they really liked it. And they were like, yeah, sure, we hired you. Let me tell you what, those guys paid well. They were very good to me. They were very awesome to work for. But I found myself ended up kind of going to StarCraft content, and I ended up starting to cover the NA scene. I do the match recaps. I did interviews. I did guides with pro players. So one of the guides that I think you can still find on the Wayback Machine is a guide I did with Scarlett. And it was her 2-base Swarm Host build that she took out partying with, I think, at Red Bull DC. So anyway, that's how I ended up with them.
So obviously, you mentioned that you wanted to do Heroes content, get out ahead of everything, theoretically get out ahead of everything, in much the same way that a lot of people are looking at Overwatch currently. What was the decision, beyond just gravitating towards the StarCraft scene more than the Heroes scene anyway, there must have been a decision-making process where you looked at the numbers and everything and said, yeah, okay, I can make it in StarCraft. What was that?
I actually never thought I could make it in StarCraft. I think it was just the realization that I love this game way more than I loved Heroes. I played Heroes. I like Heroes. It's a fun game. It's a game that I'll play with some friends when they really want to. But at the end of the day, StarCraft was just the game for me, man. I still wasn't going back to World of Warcraft, and that's huge for me because I was a major WoW addict. That's what I did with most of my life for the years that WoW has been out. And so it was like, it sounds lame, but it called to me. It was like StarCraft. It's where you want to be. I'm covering these matches. I'm doing these interviews, writing these guides. It's what I wanted to do. So then I see the opportunity. Chan Man is leaving. And I've been thinking about the idea of a show for a while, and I see that Chan Man is leaving. And I'm like, oh, I could do this. Because one thing that I think people don't really see, well, we can get to that when we talk maybe community perceptions or whatever. But either way, I see the opportunity. So I'm at Red Bull Atlanta, and I know Destiny is there, and I hit him up. I'm like, hey man, can I take you to dinner? So me, Apocalypse, Puck, Gamja, Destiny, and Tiger Lily all go out to the Aussie Steakhouse, Outback. We go to Outback, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, we're getting ready to order, and the woman asks, "What do you want everything to be on the same check?" And I didn't want to. I knew I was going there with the purpose to ask Destiny for something, so I didn't want to, offer to buy his dinner right away, because that kind of it sets a precedent for the conversation and the way things will go. And I tell him, I said, I like to be in situations where you feel, and this causes a lot of over explanation, in situations where I feel that something could be misinterpreted or misunderstood, I like to give a big preface and say, I try to kill that before anyone can get to that conclusion. So I'm like, dude, I swear to God, I don't want you to think about this while I talk to you, but I brought you here for a purpose and I wanted to buy your dinner. Ma'am, both of their dinners on me, please. And that's it. So then, with that, it was kind of forced on me. I had to go into it. I couldn't say, okay, we'll talk about it at dessert. No. So I brought up the show. I said, hey, I want to do a show. And, Chan Man's going away. I want to kind of try and fill those shoes, and I want to make some content. And I'd really like you to do that with me. And he just said, yeah. Like, there was no real big discussion. It was just, what do you have in mind? I told him, I want to do some game analysis, talk about design changes, anything that's going on with the community, those kind of things. And he was all about it. And so that was really it. I said, hey, I want to do it, by a certain date. And that's when I really, at that kind of around that time frame, so a little before, a little after, that's when I was like, StarCraft's where I want to go. Because I know, I see what became of the people who did. Granted, they had way more illustrious careers than me. They were way more important people, but I see what kind of happened to the state of the game folks, what they've done for the community, what they've done for esports. And I thought, this could be a good point to make some sort of an impact, to host good content, to make good discussion, to kind of, help be that StarCraft focus. Because remember, Chan Man Show wasn't StarCraft focused. So that's what I really wanted to do, was to create that bastion of StarCraft, regularity. And yeah, I did think, because I have very big delusions of grandeur, that one day it might mean something for me. But the initial creation intentions were pure.
Yeah, the first week that I started doing these, I had a text interview with Penguin, and I had my first ever video interview with Zombie Grub. And both of them went so in depth and gave such good answers for everything I asked that they completely wrecked a ton of my follow-up questions, and it was very frustrating, very frustrating. And I just want you to know that you're the third person now on that list, so congrats, I guess.
Yeah, one of the things I had to learn for doing interviews and for doing the show especially is that, you can plan. I used to plan. There were some episodes that I really planned, and I'd have, these are the topics we're going to discuss, and subpoints. These are the questions I'm going to ask. These are who I'm going to throw them to. These are the counterpoints I'd like someone to touch upon. And I'd send that to the guys, the day before or the morning of, and, just natural flow of conversation. Things get touched upon, not in the order necessarily that you'd expect. And so you just got to, stay on your feet. So I know exactly what you're feeling, and it's something that I had to learn, and I'm still learning to deal with.
Getting back to, you brought up the late game. I didn't even need to. That's great. You said, it all came about because you saw an area in the scene where, Chanman was departing and State of the Game was... I totally agree. The people that were doing State of the Game, everyone was just so influential and such a big deal. So you saw a place where you could come in and maybe do something for the community and also make a name for yourself potentially. Who knows? And you went to dinner with Destiny and Huck. But hold on, because I feel like that's skipping a step. Like, how did you actually get to the point in your friendship or relationship or just knowing, Destiny and that group of people so you could go to dinner with them? How did that come about in the first place?
Oh, man. I had no relationship with Destiny at all at the time. I think I messaged him before. I said, hey, can I get your Skype or something like that? Or his Skype was public. And I messaged him to say, hey, I think I'd like to take you. I think I might have said before going down there, hey, I want to take you out to dinner if that's all right. I don't remember. But I know I did have him on Skype, because when he gave me his number and I typed it into my phone, his number was in there because it was connected to a Skype. My phone, syncs my contacts with Skype with my contacts. So I think we had some form of communication, but overall, did not know him at all.
Jumping off of that point, from the very start of the late game, you've been able to pull some really great guests. Episode 1 had obviously Destiny, but also In Control, also Todd, also Katz. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find an episode of the late game that didn't have some substantial StarCraft star power, if that makes any sense. So how do you reach out to these industry figureheads, especially in the beginning, and how did you get them to do the show?
In the beginning, Twitter, man. Twitter was my best friend. I don't think I ever had that many guests that I had to get someone else to reach out for. I usually did it through Twitter, or I met them in person, got their Skype, and then messaged them later, said, hey, you want to do the show? So Twitter really accounted for a lot of it. Then the repeat guests, I had them on Skype and all that, but that's how I got everyone. And I just say, hey, you want to do the show? This is the topics, or sometimes they wouldn't care what the topics were. They're just like, yeah, I'll do it. And that's one of the things that I really am greatly appreciative of, is that I was nobody, right? I was no one. And then I come to Todd and Control and Katz, and I said, hey, and maybe it was because I had Steven on the show. Maybe that was it. But either way, I said, hey, I'm starting a show. I'm going to do it with Steven. Would you like to be a guest? And they said yes.
Are you still in touch with Destiny and In Control and even Richard Lewis? And would you consider any of the people that you've worked with for the late game in the past like a friend, or is it more of a business kind of relationship?
I mean, so there are people I've done the late game with that I consider friends. Zombie Grub, Rifkin, Penguin, all those people, Ravi, Pure Dragon. There are a lot of people that I do consider friends. Destiny, the relationship with Destiny, I like to say I like to consider him a friend, but we've never really had a friendly relationship. And that's something that I think is, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. We've had a friendly relationship. We've just never been friendly, as in we don't hang out, we don't Skype all the time, or we don't, schedule like, hey, let's, hey, dude, you want to go do fucking camping trip or any shit like that? Like, we don't do friend things. But he's always been really nice to me. Like, he's always been, he helped me a lot. I owe a lot of whatever I've achieved so far. I owe a lot of it to him. So it's a very close acquaintance. I guess we could go with that. And I talk to him still every now and then. We talked semi-regularly up until the show went on hiatus. We played a couple games together, things like that. But otherwise, we haven't really talked much. I was in his channel the other day, and he gave me shit saying, why the fuck am I showing up when I kicked him off the show, which I didn't do. So as far as Jeff, Jeff's kind of the same way. We've never really done any friendly things. I really actually don't know what Jeff thinks of me at all, really. Like, we come, he'd do the show, we'd talk, I say, hey, thanks, man. He'd send a heart, and that was it. Yeah, I think that's really it. I do have friends that I've made from, people that have come on the show, but specifically those two, good acquaintances, not really friends.
Around the same time as the late game started, Destro launched Remax, and I know that you, at the time, weren't totally thrilled with that. I know that you had asked him to be a guest. I know that there was some drama at the time. Can you talk a little bit about what you thought, looking back, put yourself in your shoes the day of when you found out that there would be two shows? Were you worried that maybe there'd be an oversaturation of that kind of content and maybe you'd be forced out? What were you thinking?
I thought, he's getting there first. And, one of my favorite movies is The Social Network, and there's the part where maybe the Winklevoss brothers were freaking out saying, Mark knew that you had to be first, and that's why he, beat us to it. Yeah, that's right. I think they're sitting in the dorm room, and they're Divya Narendra and the Winklevoss brothers are freaking out about it, and they says, he bided his time because he knows that's the most important thing. Either way, to get on topic, that was my first thought, was motherfucker, he's there first. My second thought, which happened almost immediately, was, what a dick. Because, and there are people like, I know him in Control, I think he thinks this is pretty trivial, but I had invited Desro to be one of the, I was like, me, Destiny, Desro, Protoss, eventually might be one day a decent Terran to talk about it, but Protoss, Terran, Zerg. And I had the intro all figured out, like Destiny would be the drone, I'd still be the Lycan Terran Wolf, and maybe Desro would be like a Colossus or something like that, and he'd like be killing shit in the background. I don't know, but either way, like, I was thinking that's a good direction to go, and I talked to him about it, and then just one day he comes to me and he says, hey, I don't think I'm going to do the show, thank you though. And then a week later, he announces his show, and he's starting like that week. So the late game, I wasn't ready. If you watch the early episodes, if you watch the first 20 episodes, I wasn't ready. So I pushed it up though. I was like, screw it. I announced the show, people know it's coming, so it's not like I'm coming out of nowhere with this, and I launched it. So I was a little upset, but I tried to do what I felt was the right thing, which is be really positive, be really supportive of Desro, I always retweeted his content. I always upvoted his Reddit posts. I always, when it came time for the Twitch Awards, granted, I think that his show was running better at the time, but in early 2015, when people were voting for the Twitch Blizzard Awards, I said, vote for Desro's show. And so I think I was a pretty good sport about it.
At the time, like you said, you were not very pleased with it. And I want to touch on this very briefly, but in the Reddit discussion that came from you telling that story, Feed Me, a C2, who was originally the third spoke in the wheel of Remax, it was like Desro, Huck, and Feed Me, who's a video guy from a long time ago who seemed to cause a lot of drama. But he said, he came out and he said, well, actually, it wasn't really Desro's fault. I was the one that approached him to do it. Did you hear anything about that after the fact? I mean, like, what are your thoughts now, looking back? I guess is what I would really want to know. Do you still feel a little bit mad, or do you kind of think, well, it wasn't really a big deal, and in the end, it obviously worked out? Or what do you think now, looking back?
If I can't remember what I thought at the time that I read that, but I do remember the comment, and I think when that happened, it still would have been a little decent for Desro to say, "Hey, I'm going to go do a show with someone else," kind of thing. Because the mind always wanders. Everyone wants reason. Everyone wants to know what happened, what was someone's motive, and I brood on that kind of thing a lot. So if I were to think about it right now, my thought would have been, okay, did Desro know Feed Me? Did they talk about it? Did Feed Me mention just around the same time? Because it totally makes sense that other people would try to start a show. You can see, with me not doing my show right now, there are other people trying to start shows that have started successfully shows. And so at the time, I wonder if maybe Feed Me had just said something and Desro's like, oh, well, Lycan's starting a show. Maybe we should start ours quickly. Because Desro knew the date I wanted to start, or I knew I wanted to start later down the road. So maybe they were like, hey, let's get this now. I don't know. But then at the same time, Desro was running the project. So maybe he thought Feed Me is someone who wants to. So maybe Desro decided, actually, I don't want to be a part of Lycan's show. I want to do my show. Feed Me, you said you wanted to do a show. Let's go do a show. I mean, there are a bunch of ways that it could have gone. There could be half truths or full truths in what he said. So I tried not to dwell on it. Either way, I think at the end of the day, I still would have liked Desro to at least say something to me about it.
Certainly not trying to resurrect.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, I think that's pretty dead and buried. I just want to hear your thoughts. You touched briefly on the idea of there being shows like now cropping up while you're on hiatus, and obviously, we just finished talking about getting there first back in the Remax, the late game, post Unfiltered days. How do you feel about the new shows like the Nerd Street Gamers project and Wardy's show? And honestly, I do these because I think that there's a gap in long content in the community, and that's part of you being on hiatus. Like, how do you feel about all these new projects coming up? Is it the same kind of idea as what it was back a number of years ago? So,
well, with Desro kind of thing, it was more a little personal. Him and I had an interaction and a plan, and I felt that played into the situation and my feelings about it. With these guys, I needed to take a break from the late game just because I started a new job in November. It was a more formal IT position than the stuff I had been doing before. Before, I had Mondays and Wednesdays during the day off because I worked Monday and Wednesday night. So I could spend all day Monday watching VODs that I missed on the weekend. I could spend all day Tuesday or Wednesday prepping for the show. It was a great setup. But, I had taken a financial hit to be able to keep doing esports. So I was offered a really great opportunity at the end of last year, and I took it. And I thought, maybe I can balance the two. And I found it was really hard to the more strict, sometimes 7 to 6 day job, several days a week. It was really hard to balance. So I started needing to take that break a little sooner. You'll notice that my preparation time for the Lycan League, which is why they were very sporadic near the end of the year, was entirely my fault, not base trade at all. In the late game, took some long breaks, over the holidays and stuff like that. So I needed that break, the longer break, but I held on because I didn't want to create a vacuum, and I knew that I would. I know that it might sound selfish, or it might just sound stupid, but I knew if I leave, there are other people that are going to come, and there are other people that might do better than me. But seeing these guys come up now, there was an initial pang, like a little hurt. People were excited, and it kind of hurts when you read threads and people say, like they'll say, I hope this doesn't go away like all these other shows, and then someone doesn't say the late game, or you see that they do say something about the late game, but it's extremely negative. That kind of hurts. And then so when Wardy announced his show, there was a part like, fuck, I was worried about this, so but I hope he does well. I genuinely do. Wardy's a really good guy. Joe's a good guy. So there was that initial pang, but then after that, I've just been like, you know what? And this is what I wanted to go back to. The best times in the late game, the best improvements that happened were because Desro was doing really well with his show. He was on time, or he had a very good discussion, or he had a good guest or whatever. And he'd do something, and I'd be like, you know what? I need to step up and get my game. And I would. And you can actually see the different points of improvement. And each one of those was very much fueled by Desro. So if I have anything to really be thankful for Desro for, it was for starting the show and doing it along with me, because I could have easily let work or my desire to play StarCraft rather than prep for a StarCraft show get in the way. Desro kept me driven. So maybe when I come back, these guys are going to keep me driven. But in the meantime, I'm very happy to take my free time to relax, play a little World of Warcraft, play some ladder, keep on top of my work, and to enjoy their content, because I really do enjoy it.
That was really optimistic. That was great. It was nice. And now I'm going to tear you down a little bit, and we're going to go back to like the beginning days of the late game, the early days of the late game, talk a little bit about that. You developed a certain reputation within the community for some like cringey antics between cross-dressing music videos and your anime waifu sex pillow thing. There were a few like memes that came out of the late game. So looking back, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's obviously less of a thing now. You wanted to be a comedian at some point. Obviously, you knew what you were doing to some degree. Like, was it a strategy for growth? Did it just kind of happen? How did you come into some of these things? And what are your thoughts looking back?
So I said I'm an attention whore, and I fully admit that and I own it. But I forgot to mention that I'm a shameless attention whore. I got the pillow around Christmas time, and it was a gift. And I thought to myself, the pillow, right? Just the pillow, not the pillowcase. But to talk about Kamika-chan, I was given the pillow, and I thought immediately, just the first thing I thought of was waifu pillow. And I thought that'd be hilarious, right? I tried doing a setup in my room where I had the couch, my futon folded up, and I thought, hey, I'll set the thing next to me, and like I'll get an actual mic, and I'll do the show this way, and blah, blah, blah. Like I've had a lot of big ideas for the show that never panned out. And so I thought, I'd have Kamika-chan sitting next to me and all that. And so, with the cringy stuff, the thing that really bothers me, right, is that not when people call me on it, it's that they don't think I'm self-aware, that they don't think I'm fully understanding what I'm doing. Like there are times I do make a cringy comment that wasn't intentional, but immediately after I'm like, or I rewatch the episode and I realize what I said or what I did. I'm probably one of the most self-aware people you could ever meet. Everything I do, I analyze after the fact. Most of my time in the shower is spent going like this, like, what the fuck did I say that for? But then there are things that I just think are funny, and I think people overanalyze, or people think take the moment too seriously, right? Like when the Liberator was announced, I thought it was really funny. And granted, I probably could have told the story better. I could have made the jokes better. So maybe my delivery needs a little work, but when I pulled out the Liberator sex pillows, I thought that was fucking funny. I wasn't trying to be like, hey, this guy fucks, right? No, it was Liberator, Liberator. First of all, I learned that a lot of people don't know what the Liberator pillows are. But second of all, I think it was one of the jokes that I tried to make that's always stuck with me, because when I watch people make comments about it, I didn't really get where they were coming from. Like I get where they're coming from, but I was like, did you really take it that seriously, or did you just think I was trying to be, a dickhead? And then for Kamika-chan, I said this, I didn't actually do it, but what I wanted to do to get rid of Kamika-chan is I wanted to tape a ketchup bottle inside of her, like up in her face, and I wanted to start one of my shows with her just taped to the chair, right? And then I was gonna come up behind her, and I was gonna like kiss her on the cheek, and then put my hand over her face, and then take out a knife and cut open where her throat would be and then squeeze a ketchup bottle. And yeah, you know what? You say it like that and that just sounds fucking horrid. But if you see a stream just start and you see this anime doll taped to a chair and then just dude comes out of nowhere is like slit and then just ketchup blood comes out, I think that's funny. I don't think it's should be taken seriously. But when I said that on the show, you know, I watched the chat way too much and I just see cringe. So to get a little more on track, I'm aware of the cringe, and sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's unintentional. But at the end of the day, you know, I know what I say, and I regret very little.
But do you think that it was something that, at the end of the day, you got a lot of shit for it, but it helped you grow? Do you think that's the case?
No, I don't. Actually, let me rephrase that. I do regret it. So I don't regret it from this standpoint of I think it was a stupid thing to do, or I think that I'm an idiot and I've made, you know, whatever. But I think I've made myself look very bad. I've made myself look very unintelligent because, first of all, sometimes I try to jump into conversations that I think I have the knowledge to do so, which is very easy to do in StarCraft, and that makes me look bad. Sometimes I don't have very good delivery or presentation. I used to be pretty decent. Like I said, I used to do the stand-up comedy. I did really well. I could be in a situation where I know I'm bombing and my delivery doesn't take a hit. So I know I can do public speaking very well. I can do improvisational speaking very well. But then I do those things that are cringy, or I try to talk where I shouldn't be talking, things like that. And it has definitely had an impact on people's view of me. If I had come in here like JP McDaniel, right? And I had done the show, and I've watched a lot of the episodes, the old State of the Game episodes. And if I just come in here and done an excellent delivery, hosted solid discussions, and we'll talk about why one of the reasons I think State of the Game was such an awesome show. But if I had come here and just been professional, never tried to joke around, never tried to make cringy jokes, and really worked on my presence as a host, I think I'd be a lot further along right now. But I took it as a fun, relaxed show. I didn't try to take it too seriously, and I never really tried to defend myself. Here's another issue. So, as you can tell, I'm all over the place. The first issue is that I was aware of where I am. I was very hyper aware of the fact that I am not a top tier community member. When I started the show, I was bottom of the barrel. It's like I did Ghost of Pizza, okay, and I wrote a couple articles. But then you have Gay 9, Destiny, and In Control. You know, people, Zombie Garden Rifkin. I start the show, and I'm aware of this, so I try to give deference to the celebrity of everyone else, and be very humble. And that humbleness, the humility, kind of turned into the perception that I was beta and weak and unable to control my guests. I actually had someone from DreamHack, one of the higher guys in DreamHack, say one of the reasons they don't consider me is because I can't control the people on the talk show. So I realized that I put myself into a hole with acting that way, and I'm currently trying to dig myself out. But going back to the thing that I wanted to say about the State of the Game, the other thing is they were friends, right? So they had a mutual respect for one another. So while they might make jokes about each other, while they might, you know, whatever, no one's trying to intentionally derail the show. No one's trying to really humiliate the other person. The audience knows they're all friends, so jokes are taken in a little bit more of a proper context than they are for everyone else, right? So that's one of the reasons State of the Game was so successful. And it's one of the things that I was always trying to compensate for. It's the fact that I'm not friends with all my guests. It's not that just a bunch of guys bantering, but also really well, you know, knowledgeable, make the cringy comments. I don't have the knowledge to participate in those conversations. So I don't regret it because I've had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of good episodes. But I do regret it because it's tainted the community and the people that would potentially hire me and how they view me as a professional and what my abilities may or may not be.
I remember, less so now, but in recent years, many people accused you of quote-unquote buying your way to a certain level of notoriety and fame within the esports and the StarCraft scene, which I would say is obviously not true. But do you think that the money that you invested, be it through like trips to Red Bull and BlizzCon and the tournaments and everything like that, how big a difference do you think that actually made on your career?
You know, I think the trips to, so we'll talk about the trips, right? That made some things easier, but I think my biggest success, and this used to get, I used to see comments about this on Reddit and Team Liquid, is, you know, Lycan's a meh host, but goddamn he can network, right? Because I get some little gig here or there or some sort of notoriety, and I'd hear those things, you know, goddamn he can network. I think the biggest one was during Gfinity. That's kind of died off now, but not Gfinity, I mean the networking comments. As far as buying my way into it, I think I used money to compensate for things I didn't have, right? If I had dude suggested actually, so go back to, you know, me getting into StarCraft, a dude actually had me play StarCraft. We were working at our office, and this is what, 2010 or no, 2011, right? So we're working in our office, it's fall of 2011, StarCraft 2 comes out, he's got it, and he's in the office, and he's all excited to play, and he's playing the campaign. And it's that first little mission where you're running Jimmy Raynor all around destroying statues, right? And he has me play it, and I'm like, that's cool. But I was on a Call of Duty kick. I just found Call of Duty for the first time. Modern Warfare 3 was coming out, and he let me borrow his Xbox. So that's all I wanted to do was go home and play that. And I was also doing World of Warcraft. I think Firelands was out at the time. So lots of big raiding going on, lots of slaying noobs, 420, no scope style. So I had, you know, back then, if I had started playing and I had developed a knowledge base and I had actually become really good at the game or, you know, whatever, I would have had something to stand on. I would have been there from the beginning. I could have been a person who posts, makes, you know, articles, makes content, makes videos, whatever. I could have done something to build up credit with the community, but I didn't have that. I came in 2013. It's already a very well-established scene. Esports as a whole is on the rise. So I had to do something. So I made Go Soup Pizza just for the fuck of making Go Soup Pizza. I expanded myself into esports more, doing the writing gig and the video gig and the interviews and all that, because I decided I love esports and I want to be a part of this scene. This is where I want to take my life and my career. And then I started the show, and I never bought a guest. I offered a couple guests. I'm sorry, I lied. There are 2 guests in all of the history of the late game that would not come on unless I paid them, but only 2. That's it. Everyone else came for free a couple times, especially earlier in the days when I was just, you know, so happy to have people on. I'd tip when I could. And so I did use money to go to places so I can meet people, and that did help a lot. It did make networking easy. So the TLDR for this is, yes, it did help, but I don't feel that I bought my way into the scene. I feel that I used my money to help the scene in some ways, whether it was through producing content, running the Lycan League, which I did for a very long time, whether it was doing Go Soup Pizza when I did, whether it was just randomly sponsoring players, you know, giving them gear or money when they needed it. I feel that some things I just did for the good of the community. Other things, you know, I knew there'd be a benefit for me, but I still thought it was something the community could enjoy and appreciate and benefit from. So it did help me, but I think that as much as the money helped me, it was also the ideas that I had.
You mentioned there that there were 2 guests who wouldn't, you know, just come on. Would you be willing to tell us who?
No. I will say that neither are members of the StarCraft community anymore. They were both very cool. One of them was just, both of them, extremely nice, very professional, made some of the best content. I don't fault them at all. I was very happy to pay them. So I don't want to say that in a negative way, by the way. They were very awesome and very well worth the money that was paid.
So jumping off from those points where we're talking about the way that you're perceived in the community and by certain members of the community, certain portions of the community, I think that you've become one of the most polarizing community figures in StarCraft in the post-Idra world. Definitely in like different ways than Idra was. But some people out there absolutely love you, and some of them absolutely hate you. So why do you think that is? Does it ever get to you? What's the root of that?
So it does get to me. The reason I think of it, and you know, so this is our third take because we forgot something. We had to Google it. But so the reason I think it happens is because I kind of came out of nowhere, right? I don't have a background. I'm not a pro player. I'm not someone who did an insane amount of content from the beginning and rose his way up. I kind of, in a lot of ways, jumped a step because of the kind of content I created, the luck I had with my networking and having a little bit of capital throw at the different ideas I want to do. And so some people just look at that aspect and they think, this guy's bought his way into esports. He hasn't earned anything, whatever. Some people don't like that I can be cringy at times. Some people don't like that I come off as attempting to talk about things I don't have knowledge of. There are a bunch of different reasons that people don't like me. I've said a few stupid things on Twitter here and there. And so there are those reasons, and it does get to me. Somehow I can just brush off like I know I didn't buy my way into the scene, and I don't really hear that one anymore. But the reality is the other thing, right? I could have done all those things I did, but if I came in and all my shows were perfect and amazing and really solid content, if I came in and showed myself to be the kind of host that people want it to see, I was making some really awesome videos that just were top-notch Jack Attack level content kind of thing. If I had done something spectacular or found a way to showcase my talents better, then it would be a different story. I don't think I'd have as many people, you know what I mean? There wouldn't be, as many comments. But I think a good example is Rapid, right? I think Rapid, he was a StarCraft caster before, then he went to League of Legends, then he came back, if I remember correctly. And if you look at him, right, the first day he cast, and there's a bunch of comments like, too many jokes, blah, 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 he's not really that good, he doesn't know that much. And Rapid has just done this real fast. We're talking like a couple weeks and the guy's on top of the meta. He's not making, he's not oversaturating the commentary with jokes. He's a very naturally funny guy. He's a very good caster. So there's just so much natural talent that people are like, fucking love this man. He is so cool. Rapid, yes, sparkling. People love him. He's all over the front page. And so I think that had I come to the community and done something significant or showed myself to be a very just awesome natural talent, I might not have as many haters. But because of the way that things have gone, the way that I've conducted myself in some ways, the bad is shown through. And I use the bad lightly because I don't think I've really done anything shitty. I just haven't shown myself to be a big talent. So getting to where I am and not being some sort of big talent, it pisses a lot of people off.
You opened a Patreon for the late game and the Lycan League, and you received a really strange amount of backlash from parts of the community. What do you think happened there? Do you think that ties into the idea that you were just talking about? What do you think caused that? What was going through your mind at the time?
I think first of all, we'll just talk before I kind of hash it all out. Really depressed. So I was, I took it really hard. Like the first time I ever thought, maybe I shouldn't be doing this because I'm putting a lot of time and effort into it. And I thought logically, I didn't ask for anything bad, right? I'm like, look, I'm already putting, I think at the time I was putting, 600 a month? Maybe, I can't remember. I was putting a lot of money into the Lycan League, both between admin fee and the player fees. Putting a lot into the Lycan League. I was doing the show every week, and all I was asking for is so that I didn't have to put so much, because again, when I took the job that I had during that time frame, I had taken a pay cut. And so I wasn't asking for someone to come and, buy my groceries and all that other shit. I was more just saying, help me even out the cost, because then I'm going to take that money and put it into new things, right? I wanted to expand the content that I created. I wanted to make things better. I wanted to increase the prize pool of the Lycan League. I wanted to open up maybe Gosu Pizza again. I wanted to start another show. So I wanted to pay for like assets and maybe to actually get a producer to run the show with me so I can make the show better and focus. Because one of the hardest things about doing the late game is focusing on both running the show, keeping the show on a good direction, and doing the scene switching or any kind of other stuff like that. And so thinking back to that, I didn't feel like I was asking for anything terrible. I was just asking for a little bit of, help from the community so I can spend the money I'm spending on just the Lycan League on other things, right? And there was a really big negative response. And I think the negative response came from the community being burned before, and a lot of people not really understanding. Maybe I didn't phrase it right, I don't know, but not really getting what I was saying, which was not pay me for doing this content, but help me put money into other bits of the content. So if you really looked at it, it was more like the money they were giving me, every dollar they put in here is a dollar I put somewhere else. But I don't think I communicated that properly, which would have been entirely, that's entirely on me. But then we had the show, and I think it was Red Eye and Control and Destiny, and we were talking about it, and they brought up a good point. I don't have a fan base. I have a couple people that come up and say, "Hey, man, really appreciate what you do." I have a few people that I hear from regularly that have continued to subscribe to me over the it's very few, but have continued to subscribe to me since I started doing the show. Just a lot of there has been a lot of support, but I don't have a fan base. And had I had a fan base, that's something that I could have really fallen back on if I started that. Like if Destiny starts a Patreon, it does or not a Patreon, but like a Kickstarter, it's going to do extremely well because he's Destiny. He has a fan base. He has proven years of content creation and just being who he is. And so I don't have that. So the negative reaction, partially the community being burned, partially people in the community looking at me saying, why do you deserve this? What have you done to really deserve it? Some people misunderstanding where I was going to do with the money. And then you have the small bit that was like, yeah, upvote. I can see this going somewhere. So it's just the bad outweighed the good, bad perceptions outweighed the good perceptions, and that's how it went.
You spoke briefly about the concept of you maybe not wording it right, maybe giving people the wrong idea that it wasn't a Patreon so you could pay for your groceries or what have you. It was just going to be rolled into other content. But do you think that there's a real problem with people putting up a Patreon like that or accepting donations and having that as their livelihood?
Not at all. Not at all. No. I think that to do that, though, you need to have that fan base. So I don't think there's an issue with it, but I think there's an issue for some people that they perceived that's what I was trying to do. And I haven't really worked my ass off to the point where I'm deserving of that kind of support from the community. I can see people getting a little offended if they think that's where I'm going with it, but I don't see any problem with it. If you're a streamer or you're any kind of content producer and you have a Patreon so you can make ends meet and keep doing what you love, I don't see any issue with that.
Jumping off of the idea of Patreon and your particular history with Patreon and the grief that you got as a result of your Patreon, how do you think new content creators should bridge the gap between working entirely on their own time for free or what have you and asking the community for donations or Patreon pledges or whatever it might be?
I don't think there's ever a right time to start or a wrong time to start, really. I think it's just what you ask for, right? So I think in the Patreon, I was asking for I think I put the goals up. I think I went to $1,000 with my goals, maybe more. Because I just thought, okay, if you start donating and if you guys do donate to the grand, that's $2,000 I'm going to be putting into content, straight into content, not going to be putting it anywhere else on top of whatever I'm putting in already. And just for the sake of maybe ensuring that I think I might have even done it until I could go full time. Up to this point, I can actually go full-time content creator, something like that. I don't know. But I don't think there's a right time and a wrong time. I think it's just a matter of being very mindful of it, right? So you got to know your audience and just know how and approach it smart, right? If you set up, for instance, if you have a donation link on your YouTube videos or your stream or whatever, do it up, man. If someone wants to donate to you, they're going to donate to you. If they don't, they're not going to. It's just, I guess, if you put it in the public eye, be prepared, because I wasn't, and that's one of the reasons I took it so hard. Be prepared for criticism. I'm not saying it's going to be right. I'm not going to saying it's going to be justified. But if you create something like a Patreon or a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter, it's going to be scrutinized.
Going away from the topics that are maybe a little bit more downtrodden, let's look a little bit more towards the future and some success. At the moment, obviously, you've put your projects on hiatus. We talked about that very briefly at the beginning. Do you have any idea of when you might be coming back? You obviously hosted IEM Shanghai. Is that the first sign that Lycan will be coming back with content? Or?
Yeah, I mean, that's, God, I can't tell you the amount of passion that created. That was a very exciting time. It's the biggest thing I've done yet. So it is a good sign. And I mean, I'm going to continue, doing stuff. I am going to bring the show back eventually. It's just a matter of, I want to do it at the right time where I know I can both take care of my personal life, my work life, and I can actually, have the good balance. Because right now, the IT work is the breadwinner. The late game and all the other esports stuff is just for fun. And so it is a sign that I am coming back and I'm finding new ways. I'm going to start raiding. I know it's not StarCraft, but I'm going to start raiding World of Warcraft. And I'm back with my old guild that I was with many years ago, and they have an awesome raiding schedule on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's something I can balance nicely. And so that's going to kind of be the start of me getting back into doing content, getting myself back into putting myself out there, right? And from there, I hope to start the late game again. And I have a bunch of other shows that I want to say more Richard Lewis-esque, where he does them as something is worth talking about or worth doing, rather than trying to do the scheduled thing. And I think that's what's going to work more for me. So the short answer, since I don't give very many of these apparently, is yes, content is coming. It's going to start with a little bit of World of Warcraft streaming, but it's going to come back to the StarCraft 2 show and other esports shows. And actually, the Evolution Chamber is coming back in a very awesome way with a very cool sponsor. But that will be discussed as things are finalized.
Well, that's awesome. You heard it here first, folks. Last year, you pitched the idea of a North American version or a kind of likeness of Take TV's Homestory Cup. And now it's been a year. Has any more thought been put into that idea? Is that more of a pipe dream now?
A lot of thought has been put into it. The big sponsor that I was talking to that was actually interested in it, we've kind of lost touch. So not like a huge negative way, just more the communication hasn't been there. And on top of that, I've been so inundated with work and the little bit of esports content I can do that I've planned events before, not for esports, but I've done event planning outside of esports for work. And I know the amount of work that goes into it, especially if you want your production to go off without a hitch. And I haven't been in a place to commit to that. And I'd rather put on a spectacular, really good show. Like, we're talking everything that I wanted the first episode of the late game to be, actually making it come to fruition, but then in a live audience, live people, broadcasted stream, etc. It's a lot of work and a lot of effort. I don't have money to throw around to pay people to do everything, and I don't have the network of sponsors and professionals to help me get it off, while still maintaining my normal job. So it's just, when I find the moment where I can actually commit and make it happen, I still want to make it happen, and I've still thought about it.
Do you have any concept of when exactly it might come to be?
No.
Is it something that you see happening in 2017, or is there any kind of indication of when it might be at all? Or
we just crossed the hump of 2016. If something crazy happens the end of this year, beginning of next year, and I find myself being able to maintain my household and move full-time esports and all that stuff, then absolutely would try to make it happen near the end of 2017, beginning of 2018.
You worked as a host for a few major events, Gfinity, and most recently I Am Shanghai, as we've talked about. And you mentioned how important networking was in those jobs. But talk a little bit about how you turn your success as an online personality into these offline, high-profile gigs.
So I told Red Eye either after or before the midget porn episode of the late game, I told Red Eye, I'm like, hey, I'm interested in growing as a professional and as a host. Is the late game something that can get me, whatever, and they can get me gigs? And Red Eye's like, yeah, if for the content you've done, if I were to look at you to hire you, it's the late game that I'm going to look to, et cetera. I'm like, all right, cool. And then that's actually around the time that I also went and I watched a Dream Hack, and I got Nathanius, and I think I actually got a Gemini on, and we had a maybe even Penguin, and I did like a post event analysis episode of the late game. Didn't really do well. I think it got like 300 views or something like that, but like, it was good content. So it didn't do well because it's not the content that people were coming to me for, and I don't have a big enough brand that people I'm not like Total Biscuit or even Nathanius or anyone else like that has a YouTube channel that when you post a YouTube video like that, they're like, oh, I'm gonna go check it out anyway. So I do the I do that. I'm trying to like find different ways, but Red Eye knew that I was looking. So it came, what happened? Oh, so on the back end, I'm also asking people like, yeah, I go to ESL, I go to DreamHack. I'm like, hey, what can I do? DreamHack's like, hey, you got to host an event, or you need some more on-camera time. All right, cool. Talk to you later. I go to ESL and get kind of a similar response. And eventually, though, I was talking to this producer from ESL. I can't remember his name right now, but I'm like, hey, I want to progress myself. What do I need to do to earn your favor and get a chance to be tested out? And eventually he came back to me. Like I had some ideas that I was pitching. I wrote up some scripts for different shows. The way I wanted to start was do the late game, right? Before and after a show, like a real pre-game and post-game analysis show. Lead a panel of an amalgamation of maybe some of the players that are there and the analysts and the casters, and do a real in-depth, solid, like, let's go over the maps, you know what I mean? And we get a touch board, and then you can see it like, all right, let's talk about this map. And we say, tank drops here, blah, blah, blah. Just talk about the meta that we're going to into and things we can expect, matches we're looking forward to seeing. We'll talk about real in-depth shit like, veto rates, make some predictions there. Like, who do you think's going to veto this? What do you think the map we're going to see most is in these matchups? Just all the kind of fun stuff that you can't really talk about in just 15 minutes or the 5 minutes in between unless it's directly relevant, some speculation, some banter, and then at the end of the day, really just hash it out. Like, these were incredible, have a bunch of replays to go through, have players to sit down and talk about their matches, whatever. So I had all this stuff written up, and I was sending it to people, and that's what kind of got me some attention from one of the ESL producers. And so the event came up for ESL. I casted alongside Nathanius, and it was announced. I was excited. I announced it on Twitter, and like a couple days later, like maybe it was the next day, I woke up with an email from Red Eye saying, "Hey, I got some work for you." So I think that was I don't know if that was necessarily the WCS announcement made him think of me, or if it was our conversation before. But either way, it's a really long way of saying I communicated to Red Eye that I wanted to be a part of this. Same thing with ESL, and it just turned out that everyone that could host the panel for Gfinity was busy that weekend because DreamHack was happening. So all talent was tied up. So I ended up getting to do that. And that was tied. So I got to do that. I think I did really well. Like, for my first time, if I look at other people's first time experience, getting on camera and all that, I think I did very well for a first time. Like, and I say this genuinely with no ego. I think if you look at the people that are staples now, and if you look at their first experiences, I think I was on par with those kind of first appearances. And I think if DreamHack hadn't been there, maybe that would have changed things a little bit for how they played out. But either way, so with regard to networking, that's how that played out. Is I just let people know I was willing to show what I can do in different ways. If they just help me say, what help me help you. What do you want to see from me to prove that I'm worth given a chance? And then just making it known, hey, I know you got this event coming up. Just want to say I'm interested. Just let me know. And that's about it.
Initially, my follow-up question was, do you like hosting? Is that something that you'd want to continue on with? But I think you've made it pretty clear throughout this interview that is your intention. That's the niche that you want to be filling in the esports industry. Is that accurate? Is that what your goal is?
Yeah, I like hosting. And I like hosting the desk. I like hosting. I'd like to do some stage hosting. I like to have a little more. You do the analysis hosting, and it's like, hey guys, let's have this discussion. You do the stage hosting, you can get a little and excited and like, let's cheer for this person and announcing blah blah blah. I really like that aspect of it. So hosting is something that I want to do. I'd love to cast. I just don't have the game knowledge to do it right now. Could I develop the game knowledge? Absolutely. But it's something that really, for me, I need time. I can't just sit there and play 10 ladder games a day and eventually develop the natural knowledge to really be outspoken about it. I need to study and work hard at it. It's just not something I've had the time to do. And I enjoy hosting. So it's not like I feel like I'm settling. I really enjoy hosting. So yes, again, short answer, absolutely want to keep hosting.
You attended the StarCraft 2 Community Summit at the Blizzard headquarters again this year for the second time. And now you had received a lot of flack headed into this one because of how vocal you were in 2015 after the first one, that it was going to be pants-shittingly awesome. And many people felt that the year of StarCraft after that point just kind of wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
You've been far less public with your thoughts this year, I think. Is that as a result of the backlash that you received through the course of 2015 and early 2016? And what are your thoughts having left the community summit?
All right, let's try to give a concise answer here. Yes, I was more conservative because of what I said before. In the first year, I now at this point I have mixed feelings about before, because on one hand, I think I was justifiably excited. I don't think my reaction was hyperbolic at all. I think I genuinely had the appropriate reaction to all the shit I saw. However, I think I set Blizzard up for failure. Community expectations. One of the reasons Blizzard kind of keeps things close to the glove and made us sign NDAs and didn't tell them anything was because if they tell them stuff, they have specific expectations, they have hype, and then when something doesn't come soon enough or something that isn't, people assume it's not coming at all, which is really damaging for the reputation and the relationship between Blizzard and the community. And then you have things that don't come to fruition at all, and they just lose their fucking mind. So by saying that, I thought, hey, Blizzard invited us here to speak on behalf of the community. And I thought that maybe part of what they were hoping is that we come back to the community and say, hey guys, they're listening, they're doing cool stuff, you're going to be absolutely you're going to shit your pants with excitement. And so I say all this, and I think, that's how it's going to be interpreted. People are going to think, you know what, Blizzard is there. Because one of the things, if you remember, I was often criticized for is people said I was overly positive, I was a Blizzard dick sucker, and that I never had anything controversial. I was very vanilla. I was like Chan Man. Not that I think Chan Man's actually vanilla, but that's one of the comments that was always made. And so with that, I took that all with a grain of salt going into this one. And actually at the beginning of the summit, they brought it up and they said, if you guys could not do that again, they call me out by name too. And it's like, if you guys could not do that again, we really appreciated, the sentiment, but it's caused a lot of heartache. All that said, one thing I want to say is we're still getting shit announced. Stuff has been recently announced that was talked about way back then. And there's a fuck ton more that's coming. There was more that was announced now. There was more that was talked about back then. So right here now I stand by my pants shitting shit, right? You might be disenfranchised with the developer because they didn't bring this stuff to you all now, or they haven't communicated it as it's coming out. But at the end of the day, Blizzard is doing things that you want them to do. They're making shit happen, and there's more stuff to come. So, don't give them a hard time if they don't tell you about it right away. Things take time. They have a lot of developers, but you got to think about it, right? Everyone has a different job. They have this very large team. The team isn't getting shrunk or downsized, or people aren't moving on to other games. They still have this giant StarCraft team, but they're producing Nova content. They're producing Allied Commanders, co-op Commanders, whatever. They're producing that kind of content. There's all kinds of new stuff. They only have so many art people. They only have so many networking people, so many front end and back end, and blah, 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 blah. Things take time. Things are prioritized. And while you might think this is a priority, Blizzard might think otherwise. But that doesn't mean things aren't coming. That doesn't mean they're not listening. It doesn't mean things aren't happening. It's just you have to understand the dynamic of a AAA game developer, development in general, and things take time. And we can't get everything right away. So it sucks, but at the same time, Blizzard is there and they're working on it. So if you truly love the game, go play League of Legends until StarCraft's ready to be what you want it to be. Don't care about, the scene's dying or blah, blah, blah. Love the game and play the game, and just know that Blizzard is working very, very hard to make what you want happen.
Do you ever worry, looking at that response in particular, do you ever worry that you're maybe almost sinking your own ship just a little bit, saying how, yes, you regret saying all those things that you said after the 2015 summit and how Blizzard called you out a little bit, and then saying, but there are still things coming from that summit that we haven't seen, and there's still lots to get excited about. Do you worry about that at all?
As I was doing that little rant just now, I thought about saying, maybe we should cut this, but no, because right now I'm explaining everything, right? When I write something in text, people have room to misinterpret and whatever, but I think vocally I can get things out faster and people can hear it, and I can say those things that I just clarified, which are, there's time, things take time, there's less development power, et cetera. So I think I can make more clarifications vocally like this and kind of express my tone better, that I'm not actually as worried about it as when I'm in text and I just say everything's glorious and grand. No, there are things that are going to take time. There's things that are going to not come to fruition. There's a reason that Blizzard doesn't communicate that. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't get a little bit of knowledge and then bitch when it doesn't go the way that you want it to, unless it's justified. But I'm not going to get nuanced here. If you want to know things, you need to show Blizzard a little more respect, in the sense of, not everything's going to come out the way you want it. Things are going to change, but at least you get to know what they're thinking about. And that's why the weekly updates started. And that's something that I imagine that Blizzard's butthole is just tucking real tight, waiting for fucking something stupid to happen, because they're giving all this insight into what they're thinking, and then they're expecting something horrible and negative to come to fruition if they don't deliver or whatever. And I imagine there's a lot of stuff that they're thinking of at these different times that I don't know about. And they don't mention it in the weekly thing because they're like, actually, if we mention that, we might be digging ourselves a grave. So if you guys as a community were to not show much, show so much vocal animosity, we might get to hear even more.
What sort of relationship do you, as a show host, as a event host, what sort of relationship do you have as a community figurehead with Blizzard, the company? Do they offer any support for your projects? What kind of input do they have with your projects? Talk a bit about that.
So I don't talk to like the game developers. I'm not like friends with Chris Siggety or anything like that. But the community managers have been really great. Scion, Chris, I can't remember his handle, but Chris, the new Rackle, thank you. The new community manager, Zoevia, Kiki. They've all been great. They've all been great to talk to. They've been friends. They've been confidants. They've been advisors. So it's one thing I really hate in esports is the relationship of, hey, we're not going to talk. We're not going to talk. We're not going to talk. And then, I need something. By the way, can we talk? That kind of thing. So, but the relationship has definitely been one-sided, where they've offered way more help for me than I could have ever offered for them. And I'm incredibly appreciative. So they've been there to offer assistance, and they've been there to give guidance. I can't talk about anything that's coming up specifically, but there's some things that we've discussed before and that might be coming to fruition at some point. But just in the past, they've been really good at putting me in touch with people that I needed to get in touch with to help make some type of content happen. So yeah, they've just been a really great support system.
I've been trying to take some quote-unquote fan questions in the past couple of episodes. So for future reference, anybody watching this, if you go to Team Liquid, there's a Team Liquid thread. You can @ them to me on Twitter. Anyways, so this week, this is a question that I think has been thoroughly answered throughout this interview, but I want to ask it so you can answer it directly too. Is esports something that you consider a career for yourself? Are you in this for the long haul? Last year you said that you want to spend some time as a caster and then transition into the role of a producer. Is that still true? Is that still the end goal? Do you see yourself as production after a couple years as host or caster? What are your thoughts looking forward in esports?
So right now, esports is not a career. It's a career that I want. It's not a career that I have, and it's not a career that I'm on the cusp of getting into, right?
But that's the goal.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I can see myself getting into, I've been told to apply to a couple of the bigger companies in esports for jobs that don't have to do with actually hosting and casting. But then that gives you that step in the door, right? Like I go work for Twitch or something like that. And if I work for them, then I can take other opportunities, get a little more networking within the scene, et cetera. And it's something that would be encouraged. It's a little harder, when you work for a company that has nothing to do with esports and you're like, oh, by the way, I want to go spend a week in China. Yeah, that went over real well. So it's where I want to end up. And as far as going caster, host, then to producer, that's kind of changed with E-League and the advent of modern esports, where we see it gaining this giant media traction. I'd actually like to be on TV. When I was doing stand-up comedy, I always thought, if I made it in stand-up comedy, I could kind of transition into acting. And that is kind of how I look at esports now. If I can transition into, being a permanent panelist, for major esports events or something like that, that'd be fucking tits.
Is there a point where you sat back and you thought to yourself, yes, I am some sort of a big deal now? Or is that a point that you don't think you've reached yet? Have you had that moment of, yes, I'm doing something that is really good and I'm really good now in this scene?
I think I have some sort of notoriety within StarCraft, but it's nothing that I want it to be. Like, it's nowhere near what I want it to be. I don't want to be, glorified as some sort of, savior of StarCraft, or, the most incredible X, Y, or Z within StarCraft. But I know that I have a lot more to offer. I know I'm a much better speaker than I've shown. I know that I am a much better analytical mind than I've shown. And I know that just from my career. And so, outside of esports. So when I think about that and I think of what I have to offer, and I know I have, a pretty decent amount of creativity, I know that I could be something more than I am right now. So where I am, I'm very happy to have. I'm very thankful for everyone that's ever supported me, or, upvoted a post or said, hey, thank you at an event. But I know I could be better, and I know I am better as a person, that I can develop myself more. So I'm not satisfied. So I never really sat back and thought, yeah, big deal. Like Robbie the other day said, you're a prominent community figure, when we were having an argument. And like that kind of stopped me, from having my argumentative mindset, because I was a little flattered, a little taken aback, but I don't think that I'm anything special yet. So I still have a long way to go.
So to be clear, you don't see yourself as a prominent community figure? No.
Not really.
Interesting.
I think that there's just, a lot of the big names are gone, so I kind of shine a little more, if that makes sense.
Well, on the screen that the viewers are looking at right now,
I know.
talk show, event host,
that.
and community figure.
I smiled when I saw that. Thank you.
I disagree. I think that you are, in my opinion. Moving on, though. You are somebody that I identify, and I think I've said this in a number of the interviews that I've done so far, if not maybe all of the video interviews. But you help a lot of new people trying to make bigger names for themselves in esports and in the scene in general. I mean, Pig, the first time I actually saw Pig was on the late game. And I don't know how many other people would be able to identify with that. Maybe I saw him in a WCS qualifier or something like that. But the first time I really remember seeing Pig was on the late game, and I remember thinking, wow, this guy's really cool. Do you seek out new talent in any way? Is that something that's important to you?
It is. First of all, I want to say about Pig. Pig's a way bigger dude than I am, as far as, actually I think he's a little taller too, but he's a bigger guy than I am in esports. He was a very good pro player. Had a very good run in 2015, I believe it was, and early 2015, late 2014. And so, yeah, so I don't think I did anything for Pig.
Well, I'm gonna cut in here actually, because you were, if not before the good run, you were in at the very start of the good run. So I
don't know.
Take a little.
He also had a great stream, so I can't agree with you on that. I'm not one to mostly disagree when I'm on camera with people, but I can't agree with that. But either way, I do. I've brought Gemini on. That's one I could think of right off the bat, and I'll use him as my example because he's the one I brought on to most things. That's because I've talked to Gemini. When I did the WCS, the only reason I knew shit about Protoss matches is because Gemini helped me prep. And that's something I have no shame in admitting, is that when I go to do these events, I reach out to the people that I know their shit, and I get information from them. So Gemini is one that I brought him on the show. I did that analysis show with him. I think he did an episode of the Evolution Chamber as well. And I don't look at people like, you're lower, you need help. It's more like, if I were in your shoes and you wanted to be a member of this community, wouldn't you want someone to reach out and help you, right? Like, I had Destiny, there. No one reached out to me and said, hey, let me help you. But there were people who were there for me, and I want to be there for other people, because I have this, one of my delusions of grandeur is that I'm a big enough person, I'm important enough that I can turn to a producer and say, hey, we have an open slot. I want you to hire this person, or I want you to give this person a chance, or do something for those kind of things where someone that might not have had the chance otherwise can get that opportunity. I want to be able to pay it forward.
Speaking as somebody who guested on the late game as a very much a nobody, I still have people being like, oh, hey, you're that guy that was on the late game that one time. It's like not even hosted on YouTube or anything. So I'll just toss my hat in there. I mean, you've helped me a lot, and I've been very public with that. But, yeah, absolutely, I think that you're somebody that does a lot and helps a lot with your presence. Out of everyone that you've worked with so far, on the late game and otherwise, who's been your favorite, your top list of community figures that you've worked with?
So I'll give a few. Jeff on the late game is someone that you can throw a question at, and as long as he doesn't think it's a stupid question, he can fire off an answer to anything. I can talk GSL, I can talk North American StarCraft, I can talk some random Protoss bullshit, and he's going to have a good answer, and he's going to make the show flow well. And that's one of the reasons I asked him to be on the show. Richard Lewis and Thorin, two of the funniest guys I've ever worked with in my entire life. And the time working with them on the desk, I tell you what, man, my Counter-Strike knowledge, but from then to now, I'm exponentially better now than I was then, and I had to do a lot of cramming for that. So I asked a lot of generic questions, like, what did you think of that match? So-and-so seemed to be ahead. What happened? Those kind of things. And I tell you what, man, you give them just a little bit of bait, and they can go off, and they do very funny commentary. They do very solid commentary. They did my job for me when I was on that desk with them. So two of the biggest pleasures I've had to work with. The crew at Gfinity. So if we're going to talk about people behind the scenes, crew at Gfinity, absolutely amazing. Really enjoyed working with them. Shout out to Ollie and all those other guys. Yeah, so I'd say Richard Lewis, Thorin, Jeff are some of my favorite people that I've worked with. And wait, hold on. Let me say Destiny, by the way. I don't know. I think I've just made it so apparent. The reason I didn't say him first is because I've always enjoyed working with Destiny. I've been very vocal about that on Twitter. A lot of people say, why do you have Destiny? And I'm very open about, I enjoy him. He's like a security blanket having him on the show. If there's ever a dull moment, I can at least, he can chime in, look up from his Hearthstone game or whatever and make some sort of commentary. So I do want to say that it's always been great to work with him.
What advice would you give to anybody trying to work their way up in the esports scene, in the StarCraft scene? Do you have any advice?
Be genuine. People can smell a shill. Sometimes people think they smell a shill and it's not a shill, but people can smell someone that's just trying to weasel the way up. And if you were going to go back to the question about why I think some people don't like me, I think they look at me as that. They look at me as like a careerist, who's set my sights on esports and I'm just trying to do whatever I can to get to the top. And so, with all that said, I think that if you're genuine, you have a good idea and you just follow through with it. That's the biggest thing you can do. Be yourself and just bring something to fruition. Don't stop when you have that moment that you think, is this fucking worth it? If you really love esports or you love the game that you're talking about or that you're trying to do something for, do it. Do it and make it happen. And if it doesn't succeed, well, on to the next one, right? Or keep doing that one until it grows. If you're trying to be the next day 9, make those episodes every day. Don't skip. You got 10 viewers. All right, cool. Make sure you have the 9-1 Reddit rule and post to Reddit, but you'll get that traction if you work hard and you look for improvement. So again, let's give the solid answer, or the short answer. Be yourself, be genuine, be true, especially to everyone that you meet, because even professionally, for those who actually work, so not just the viewers, but those who are working in esports, being a genuine person will take you a lot farther than trying to be everyone's friend. Follow through with your bit of content and always look for ways to improve. You can always be better. You need to look at what you do, watch your videos again, read what you write again and again, and work on improving yourself. And that's the biggest advice that I can give from where I sit.
So that's about it. That's all I had. Is there anything that you want to give a shout out to? Is there anything that you wanted to talk about? This is your time now. All
right. Well, let me just Skype is weird. All right. I'm gonna going to scroll through this because I'm going to see if I want to make sure I don't forget anyone, but I won't hit everyone. So I want to give shout outs. First of all, Mattles and Penguin. They called out Gosu Pizza during the Mana Fire Cake match because it was going for like 30 minutes, or no, I'm sorry, an hour and a half or whatever. About that point, they were running out of things to talk about. Penguin was doing the freestyle raps, and they said pizza.gg or whatever, and I tweeted out, I'm like, no, it's Gosu Pizza, and they retweeted, and haha, it was brought up on stream, and it was just after that I talked to Mattles, and we talked about becoming a caster in esports, and it was just a very good conversation. So Mattles and Penguin are the two of the nicest guys I've ever met. And I really am thankful for all their help. Iromi, he helped a lot with Lycan League and the Liquipedia stuff. Really appreciative of him. Helped me get my show onto the Liquipedia when I kept screwing that up and not doing it. Zombie Grub Rifkin for doing the Lycan League. They did it for free. I mean, I tried to tip them when I could, but they took it on and they did it for free. I have to apologize to them because I really screwed up a lot of times, and like at last minute I'd be like, oh, sorry guys for not doing it this week, or I didn't have time to plan or whatever, when it would have just taken 2 seconds to let them know a little beforehand. So poor planning on my part, but they always stuck with it, and I really appreciated that. I want to thank all the people that ever came on the late game, whether it was a last minute invite or ahead of time. A lot of people saved my butt. A lot of people just gave me really good content. I'm very appreciative of that. And yeah, I mean, I think I could really go on. Destiny and In Control, who made the late game entertaining and fun. It's been exciting working with them. They're big names. Every now and then I'll watch old StarCraft content, and just to see the things that they've done and look at what little I've done. I still am very humbled by the chance to get to work with them. And huge shout out to Red Eye. Red Eye gave me my first big esports event job, and I'm incredibly thankful to him for that. If you guys haven't read his book, do it. I read it like 2 times before I went and did the Gfinity thing. It's pinned to the top of his Twitter. Huge shout out to Blizzard. Blizzard has been very nice to me. They've been very very good to me over the years. So I want to thank Kiki and Sion for all the time I worked with them. Chris, it's Oracle. It's getting, him and I are talking more and more, and it's really nice to work with him. So all the folks at Blizzard are really great guys, and I really appreciate guys and gals. I really appreciate getting the chance to work with you. I think this is more shout out than most people do, but I don't have anyone. It's not the Grammys where someone's going to pull me off. So I want to thank Emil, the Polish caster, for doing the Polish stream for StarCraft. Really appreciate that. Emily Chow, worked with her at ESL. She was the one I coordinated with and who ran the show when I was at working with Nathanias that weekend. Who else? Nicolas Chassois, I think that's how you say it. He's done a lot of artwork for me. Really great to work with him. I was one of the folks who helped start the the weekly All In, so it was really fun to get to work with him. I think we'll save it for that. I want to give a shout out to that guy. His name was Ian, and this was way back in the early days. I got to work with Ian, or not work with him, but he helped me teach me some things about StarCraft that I didn't know. He was a grandmaster named Lunar or something like that on the ladder, and he was just this kid. Literally, he was a fucking kid, but he was there to give me knowledge where I didn't have it, teach me things about the past in StarCraft 2. So in the early days, he was very, very helpful. Richard Lewis is someone who's been really good to me as well. He's come on a lot of shows. He's given me a lot of advice. So big thank you to him. Hotbid, who let me write for Esports Express. So Hotbid, Wax Angel, Heyoka, all those people, it was really great to work with them. They gave me a lot of really fun times, and I could go on, but I think I'll stop there. So anyone I didn't mention, I promise you I think about you all the time.